Welcome back to Fast Monty's Garage. Today we're clearly not in my garage. We're at Currie Enterprises. They're known for building badass rear ends for almost any kind of car. So if you don't know and you're new to the channel, I have a 69 GTO. The very last thing I need to upgrade on my car is the rear end. I still have my stock 10 bolt. So I love doing twisties, I love autocross. So I think this would be a perfect addition to my build. So today we're going to do a factory tour to see exactly what goes in behind the scenes to build the Currie rear end, all the options, and maybe it'll fit your vehicle. So leave a comment below what car you have, what you're interested in getting. But most importantly, if you haven't noticed or if I've ever helped you out in the past, there's a join button below. Consider helping out the channel. All proceeds go to buying more parts and more videos. So with that being said, let's go get this tour going. Everyone, meet John. He is the, you tell everyone, you're the sales manager for everything on road, right?
Yeah,
something
so
like that?
On road, hot rods, street performance, so anything that has to do with putting a car or even a street truck on the road and providing a drivetrain part or rear end for it, that's what I manage.
Well, perfect interlude, because I want to know, how did Currie get involved? What's the history? Like, I mean, everyone knows you guys do 9-inch rear ends, but
absolutely, yeah.
What in the hell?
We've been doing it longer than anybody else. The Currie started in 1959. So, we're talking about the dawn of the Ford 9-inch happened in 57,
Oh my God.
Yeah, so, Frank Currie, in 1959 was actually working in a warehouse that built drivetrain parts for like scooters, the electric carts. And they came up with this idea, well, we need some sort of, axle in the back to drive these carts. And so what they were doing is they were taking a Ford 9-inch and they were cutting it down to fit in these little electric carts. And he started looking at it like, well, this thing is so easy to work on, we can do it in other things. And as you can imagine, the dawn of hot rodding kind of around that same time, right? Yeah. So how do we make our cars go faster, So they were taking, he had friends that were like, hey, can you put one in the back of my hot rod? Absolutely. So Frank started thinking, well, this is a great business idea. So he started doing it on the side and then left that job and decided, I'm going to do this and then sell it back to them and do rear ends for cars.
Wow.
And so that's how it all started, in his garage, building Ford 9-inch rear ends. And here we are today.
I have hope. I'm doing stuff in my garage already. I can start my own business one day. I'm kidding.
Right on.
So nowadays, what's Currie's strength? Like what are you guys known for now?
So over time, those rear ends, they just stopped showing up in junkyards, right? Somewhere around the 80s, kind of 90s era, you couldn't go to the junkyard and find a good 9-inch rear end to start from anymore. Because that's kind of what guys did, as far as hot rodding. All over those years, it was like, well, I'm going to go find a part, modify it, and make it work in my hot rod, right? So at some point, we were doing the same thing for a very long time. Currie would hunt the world for junkyard 9-inch rear ends, bring them back to Currie, tear them down, and try to figure out, is there any good parts here that we can refurbish, reuse, and sell for a hot rod or a muscle car or a truck or a Jeep and whatever it might be that a guy was trying to upgrade. And so over time, some of that, we just couldn't find good stuff to tear down and refurbish anymore. So what Currie did was we decided we needed to start making this stuff brand new from scratch. Right, we saw it coming down the road. So it's like, hey, we're gonna build our own housings, we're gonna make our own axle shafts, we're gonna build our own third members, and all of this is gonna be 100% aftermarket. So we went down and engineered everything, and here we are today. We can build a Ford 9-inch rear end for almost anything, to any dimension, for almost any vehicle. So, depending on whether or not you're gonna be drag racing, autocrossing, off-road, rock crawling, desert racing, we can build a Ford 9-inch because of how versatile it is for those applications.
So why a 9-inch versus a GM whatever?
Yeah, so 10 bolt, 12 bolt, whatever it might be, right?
And I know I'm going to get lit up right now. I already know that. Save your comments. I just want to know. Okay?
Yeah, well, it's better in every way. And it's hard to say that, but you know, when we are talking about how easy it is to work on a Ford 9-inch is, you know, another huge factor. But when it boils down to it, it's just a stronger rear end. The way that the axles bolt in, opposed to using a C-clip to hold in an axle shaft. So on a Chevy or on a GM, you know, rear end, the only thing holding in your axle in from evacuating out the side of the car, if you break an axle shaft, is that C-clip in the center section. So you break an axle, and the whole wheel and tire and axle shaft can just eject out the side of the car.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So on a 9-inch, it's a bolt-in axle shaft. So it bolts in out on the end. And so if you ever did have a catastrophic failure with the axle shaft,
it doesn't go anywhere.
It doesn't go anywhere. You're locked in. So, you know, if you go through a tech at a drag race and they know you have a 9-inch underneath it, you're good. Check that off. You're all right. You know, so you're safe. So that's a huge reason right there. The fact that,
there you go.
Yep. The fact that a 9-inch ring gear is, I'm gonna throw a word at you, it's a hypoid gear. So it's got a longer contact patch between the pinion gear and the ring gear, just makes it a stronger gear setup. Wow. So if you look at the difference between a 10-bolt ring gear and a 9-inch ring gear, you'll notice right away that, wow, that gear looks stronger. It's bigger in diameter, it's got a much longer pinion gear on it that meshes with the ring gear. So that tooth just hits a lot more engagement. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So there's that. There's other things I can go into. I mean, the pinion itself has an extra pocket bearing, so it's well supported.
Wow.
You know, and it, you know, if you're wanting to work on it, it's a lot easier to work on, man. You can pop off the third member, say at the track, you want to swap in a different one because the gear ratio just isn't right for that particular, you know, race or whatever it might be. You can easily do that in the trailer, you know, within, you know, an hour or two. So, yep.
Well, that sounds good. What about fitting a 69 GTO? Like, what is
Absolutely. No, why not? I mean, we've got most popular fitments perfected. I mean, because we've been doing this for so long, we have jigs that have been set up so that, you know, with all of the right geometry, with mounting locations and the factory points, so that you can easily roll out your stock rear end.
Is that what I'm looking at right here?
Roll it right in. Yes, absolutely. What we're looking at right here.
Looks like stock.
So what these are our most popular muscle car and hot rod fitments. So these are what we load our crate rear end program with. So if you've got a 68 to 72A body, right? I've got a housing that's hanging on the shelf that is built to the factory width with all of the brackets already welded on it, welded up and ready to go. And that's what this is here. This is the building of our crate program.
Wow. So these are like every major type.
Yeah, I mean, really, GMA, 68 to 72.
Right there.
You can read that one right there. So, you know, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 housings here ready to rock and roll. I've got room for 5 more, and the weld shop's probably building those because we try to keep 10 of them in stock
so you keep
at all
like
times.
A Kanban of certain amount, so you're always in stock.
So we're always in stock. So the customer
always in stock.
We're trying, you know, we're trying to keep up with demand. Guys can call and say, hey, I've got a Chevelle, I'm looking for a rear end. How long is it going to take? Well, if you want our crate rear end, I can go pull the housing off the shelf. I've got the axle sitting on top of it, and we'll move it over to final assembly, and we'll put it together for you.
Wow. Now, you mentioned earlier you also have already powder-coated versions,
yes,
right? Let's go take a look at that.
Okay.
Bam, powder-coated and bagged.
Boom, powder-coated and bagged. So again, right on the opposite side of where we had the raw version is the powder-coated version.
Wow.
And we put it together, it's ready to go and get over to final assembly, you know, so that we can put together a powder-coated rear end exactly for the same application.
Nice.
Yeah, so, you know, why would you want a raw rear end? Some guys want to paint it to match their car, you know.
Sure.
I mean, you know, so there's
or maybe have welding to do, or something.
you have some welding to do, right? So somebody wanted to customize it. They're doing a coilover conversion and they wanted to move something or eliminate something. Well, then we can ship it in the raw, right? Or if you wanted a completely assembled, powder-coated, satin black disc brakes, the whole 9, well, we'll pull it from here and move that to final assembly.
Because 9 times out of 10, I mean, no one's going to see your rear end. Unless you're in a lifted truck.
Yes, right? Absolutely. You know, and we're an undercar product, so you know it is the most functional portion of it. Is really that what matters, right? It's got to function. So absolutely.
So speaking of function, good segue. The third member that goes in there, are there different options for that on a standard?
Absolutely, totally. Yeah, because it kind of depends on the use. Do you want a spool? Do you want a differential like a limited slip? you know, if you're gonna drag race or you're gonna autocross, they're two totally different third members.
Okay.
Right? Do you have an overdrive? Do you not have an overdrive? Totally different gear ratio.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we keep in mind what's most popular, and I have those in stock. Come check it out.
Okay. So what am I looking at here?
So, dude.
These are all the
Right?
all the different ratios.
Yes, different ratios. You know, so basically 9-inch, third member, our nodular iron case, our yoke. You know, we started making all of this because, you know, again, you can't just go out and get them anymore, right? So there's no refurbishing a 9-inch case. But I've got them in all the different ratios. If you've got a turbo 350, no overdrive, here's a 3.0 that's in stock, ready to go. If you've got a 700R4 or a 4L80E and you need a 350 or a 370 or a 411, I've got that ready to go.
Wow.
You know, and then these are all equipped with our Currie Twin Track. Our Currie Twin Track is our own limited slip that we started to manufacture.
Oh, okay.
I've also got spools and I've also got open differential possibilities, but this is going to be the most popular stuff. Is going to be putting a limited slip in it.
And then what about the yoke? I understand there's different sizes for different cars.
There are different sizes for different cars. We have standardized on a 1350. Our 1350 is going to be the largest size yoke that you're going to want to put in a car.
Sure.
And what's nice about the 1350 is it's easily adaptable up or down, right? So if you do have to go down to a 1310 for some reason, you've got a factory drive shaft and it was the right length, but you won't, have a Currie and you're upgrading, you could just go use a adaptable U-joint that goes from 1310 to 1350.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
but in stock, ready to go. And if you need something that's obscure, you need like a 456 gear with a spool or something really weird, we can definitely build that too. We just start from scratch.
Okay. So speaking of starting from scratch,
Yes.
why don't we walk through a custom order? Like you guys do customs too,
Absolutely.
right?
I can show you how that's done.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay.
All right, John, I think I'm a newbie at this, but I'm very familiar with manufacturing.
Okay, all
This
right.
is clearly the first step.
Yeah,
I mean,
clearly the first step, we're starting with round tube.
Right.
Is really what it boils down to. So, and we actually do have different diameter tubes based on the application. Standard street car stuff, which we know is our most popular stuff, 3-inch diameter tube, right? There's off-road truck stuff that gets, a 3.5 or a 4-inch diameter tube. There's a couple of cars that have a swedge tube, the original Mustang rear end.
Oh, okay.
Like the GT 350, had it went from a 3-inch tube down to like a 2 1/4. It kind of swedged down, and so there's a replica rear end that we built for that. But basically, what we're doing is we're taking tube, we're moving it down to the cutter, and then we set up the cutter to cut per length. And we actually got down to it to where we're actually cutting left-hand tubes and right-hand tubes based on the application. Like say a GTO, a Chevelle, a Camaro, a Nova has a specific length left and right.
Okay.
And we actually cut those, pre-cut them, and then we put them in stock. So, and we
interesting.
part number them down to the tube. So that way we can have this stuff pre-cut, and kind of ready for our welders to kind of get to it, pull it. Hey, I already got left tube, right tube. Yeah, I need part number 1, 2, 3, and 3, 4, 5 to build the Chevelle rear ends. And then we're going to build 10 of them. So let's go ahead and grab all the tubes that we need and then move it down the way.
Right.
Yeah. So let me show you those.
So what about custom length?
Custom
Are you
length.
guys doing that anymore?
So here's what we can do.
Okay.
Is you can come and say, hey, really, really, really needed an inch taken off, because I've got a specific idea in mind. Okay, so instead of cutting a production run of tubes, we're going to run that work order down one at a time. So you can do that and call a sales, say, hey guys, this is what I need, and we'll do all the math and figure that out, and then we're going to run that work order onesie twosie right down here. So we'll actually, next production run of tubes, so that we're cutting 3-inch tube, we'll go ahead and do all of these that we need for stock, and then we have these one-off work orders, let's cut those too.
Okay, so you can't really do that online. They have to call you.
Yes.
And talk about it.
Yeah, there's just too many factors to take into account.
Yeah.
For example, there's only so narrow you can go and still weld a bracket to it, right? So I have no real estate left to put a spring bucket on. What do I do now? So we know those limitations. So that way we can kind of say, hey, that's too narrow. I can't do that.
Okay. Awesome. Good to know.
Yeah, absolutely. So after this gets done,
next step?
Next step is we're going to move to putting the tubes into a housing.
All right, so all fixtured up.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're doing here is, we have a fixture that goes through the rear end. We want to try to keep things straight as possible, right? So this goes through, it actually locates on a case and the bearings in the center of the case here, and then we can slide these pucks in and out to make sure that everything is perfectly straight and perfectly aligned with the center. So that bar kind of keeps things straight.
Yeah.
And then what we do is we take our housing ends, big Ford, housing ends that we machine now, and then our tube that we cut left and right, right? And then we made it to the center. We tack weld them in place, make sure that everything stays straight, and then we weld it up. So we've got left and right tubes. This is built to a specific width. We kind of double check and make sure the width is correct. We know things are straight. We can tack weld it and then fully weld it. And then that way we know the housing is perfect. So this is the right way to do it. And then for the bracketry, we can actually move it over, mount it up in our jig, and then make sure that the brackets are welded in the right spot too.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
Is that the next step?
That is the next step.
So you guys might be wondering, there's no one around here because Fridays are your day off for the shop.
Yep.
So they're not manufacturing. I wanted to film when there's no noise, right? Can you imagine grinders going on in the background? You wouldn't even hear us talk.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that said, here are the jigs, right?
Yeah, so these were the jigs that we used this last week, right? So we've got our 65 to 70 Impala, we've got our 70 to 81 Camaro, we've got 59 to 64 B-body, which is also Impala. But we'll take this, we'll mount it on the actual weld bench, and then all of the bracketry actually mounts up to the mounting locations here with the housing sitting on the jig, so that we can make sure that the bracket placement is repeated no matter what, right? So that way everything is perfect. So we always say, hey, brackets are welded per jig. We've had these jigs perfected for a long time. We go back and revamp them. You can see this one's got a date of January 21.
Right.
So we went back through and made sure this was correct, and then made a new jig just to kind of update everything. But yeah, no, the per jig is important because we want to make sure that every bracket is where it's supposed to be to make it an easy installation.
So you make rear ends for Detroit Speed? Is that what I'm looking at here?
So we have a Detroit Speed bracketed Camaro rear end. So we also have one for Ride Tech. We also do some, proprietary, I guess you could say just for those guys kind of thing.
Okay.
Right. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and create a jig for them as well. So if you are,
So it fits their suspension.
it fits their suspension,
Ah, okay.
right? Absolutely.
I've only had one coffee, guys. Give me a break.
Yeah. So I mean, if you're building a Camaro and you're using Detroit Speed's 4-link, and you wanted to buy a rear end that had all of the bracketry already welded on it, because that's an insane amount of work for somebody to do in their garage, right? Well, you can call Currie up and say, hey, you guys have a 9-inch already set up, right, with the brackets already welded? Yes, we do. So we'll pull this out and do it for you.
Wow, I didn't know that. Okay, that's awesome. That's
Right
good
on.
to know.
Yeah,
Good to know.
absolutely good to know.
Okay, so after we weld all the brackets on there,
Yes.
then now we're marrying it to.
Yes, so now we've got a housing that's completely built, right? So we need to go and get our axle shafts, we need to get a third member based on the specs, and then we need to put everything together.
All right, clearly this is final assembly.
Yeah, so this is final
So
assembly,
you can
right?
order brakes of whatever you're choosing, I'm guessing?
Yes, we have popular options, right? So we've got, this is called the Explorer brake. It's loosely based on a Ford Explorer, which is a nice standard looking brake. Like if you've got a standard looking front disc brake kit, this is a great standard looking rear disc brake kit. It's got a parking brake built into it. We also have Willwood options, Bear options. We've got a couple other options to go along with it. Or you can buy a rear end without brakes and put on your own if you really decide to.
Gotcha.
But most customers really want this. The full rear end, assembled by Currie, shows up on a pallet. Cool, I'm gonna roll this right underneath my car, put it up, jack it on up, put it right on the suspension mounts, and you're done.
If I'm not mistaken, this is for a GM car.
This is for an A-body. Yes,
Yep.
absolutely.
I can tell from the shock mount, the lower
And you got
control
your uppers
arm, and
here.
the
Yep, so factory 4-link
Yep.
car
Nice.
with all the A-bodies. I think it's one of the better designed factory rear ends, factory car suspension that
Right.
you can really work with, right? You got rid of leaf springs. Here's a 4-link car for you guys. It's triangulated. Dude, this is awesome. So I love Chevelles for that reason. One, they're full frame cars. Two, factory 4-link cars. That's an awesome rear end, and what we've done is just upgraded it by banking all of that adaptable to the 9-inch.
awesome. I'm getting more excited about getting one for myself now.
Yeah,
So-
I bet, man. Yeah, so we can.
I gotta ask you now.
Yeah.
What are the options? Like, I understand. I'm not an expert, right?
Okay.
So the full floating concept. And those of you guys, I've done a little bit of research. Full floating versus not floating. Our GM axles are not floating, like you said, it's just a C-clip. And oh no, this one would be bolted
so
in.
really when it boils down to the whole full float, semi-float, standard axle shaft, and talking about those deals is we're talking about a flanged axle, right? And you know, why don't I grab one? Let me grab one. Yeah, let me grab one.
All right, so this is the standard housing.
And what we call a semi-float axle or a flanged axle is really the same thing, right?
Okay.
So your axle has a flange on it, and the wheel studs are actually a part of the axle shaft itself. So this is a good example. This is how it bolts on, okay? So you've got a retainer plate, looks like this, and it slides on in there, and then bolted all together holds the axle in here, right? So
instead of the C-clip back here you're talking about.
Exactly, right, you know, so kind of as a safety factor, absolutely just better by design. And then this axle shaft, right, the bearing actually gets pressed onto it. So your bearing actually lives on the axle shaft.
Yeah.
You know, so we used a taper roller bearing, we used Timken bearings, it's nice stuff, but you know, it's all the weight of the vehicle is on this flange and also on this bearing, right, as one piece.
Okay.
So the difference between this and a full float axle is very different. So let me grab one of those and I'll show you that.
All right. John, you said full floating, but what in the hell? This is way different than
This is our Star Destroyer spaceship. So this is our, we call our F9. It's a fabricated 9-inch, much more strength and structural rigidity when you fabricate and bend sheet metal, right?
Oh,
so
sure.
this is our strongest street car 9-inch housing that we make.
Dang.
Yeah, dude.
And this is the full floating.
This is the full floating setup, and what that is in reference to is how the axle shaft actually works.
Okay, let's get a good close-up of that, because I could already tell this thing is beefy as hell.
Absolutely, man. A full floating axle shaft, one, you want to get the weight off of the actual flange of an axle. So what we've done here is this is our protouring floater. It's a 1-ton F350 version bearing that we actually make in-house, and we remachine a spindle for the front that is your smaller car bolt pattern, right? That can fit a car wheel. But I mean, this thing is hefty, right? This is the same kind of thing you'd see in like a stadium super truck.
Wow.
So you could launch a car, throw it into the corners, wail on it, and not see any deflection with this.
Wow.
Right? No caliper knockback, nothing, because the entire weight of the vehicle is living on a separate bearing.
Wow.
So then your axle shaft is actually physically only there for twisting forces. So then we actually make this in a 35 spline because we expect you guys to be running a whole lot of horsepower, right? So this is capable of all the horsepower you want to throw at it. And you know, this has a popular mounting for a caliper, and we've got it all set up with a brake kit, with a Pro Touring brake deal. Man. So yeah, man, and then super serviceable too. I mean, if you really needed to service this, you can just pop it off. 4 giant studs hold that on there. And
that's sealed.
It's sealed. So this does not require gear oil to stay lubricated. This is a sealed unit.
Oh, nice.
Yep, absolutely, man. So this is some heavy duty.
That is
heavy
so
duty.
Pretty.
Yep. So this is exactly what you would need if you were running a Pro Touring car.
Wow, that is fantastic.
Yep. And then I said, like, axle shaft, strictly there just for twisting forces. This is a full floating axle shaft, particularly for this rear end. You know, we've got the 35 spline for the center section that goes in through this way, and then we've got the 35 spline on the outer board section that's going to mate to your setup here.
So the other one's a 32?
31.
31?
Yeah, 31 is a pretty standard setup for a street car.
This is 35.
This is 35.
Jeez.
Yep, absolutely. So not only is this axle shaft not having to deal with any kind of you know, bearing out on the end or a flange for it to bend, it's strictly there for just twisting forces. And then on top of that, it's also 35 spline. Oof. Yep, absolutely, man. This is stout stuff here.
Yikes.
Yeah, let me, I gotta get this, I gotta pack this stuff up. Let me go put it back in the box over here.
Yeah, fair enough.
Oh man, all right, here, perfect. God. Thank you for helping me with that. I want to show you something.
Who's the luck? What? What?
What do you think of that?
That's Monty's garage. This is mine?
This is yours.
Holy crap. So this is my housing too?
Yes, this is your housing too.
Dude.
Yep, absolutely. So this is perfect for an A-body setup. I know that you've got something special going on that you said you're doing, but this should be a direct bolt-in with some modifications, given what you're doing, but this is yours.
Oh my God, thanks, John.
Yeah, man, it's our pleasure.
Oh, well, you guys know the drill. If you haven't subscribed yet, because we now have to implement this into the GTO, and I have custom brackets to put on because I have a relatively custom Global West coilover setup that I will show you guys how to install, but I have to do custom welding. We're gonna Cerakote this. We're gonna put Willwood brakes on it,
Awesome.
and they're transfer from my GM 10 bolt, direct bolt on. I have a kit from Willwood, so Willwood helped me out with that. But man,
this is gonna be a huge improvement over what you have now.
I cannot wait. And what gears did I get?
Oh man, that's a good question.
Should we show that off?
We should definitely do that.
Let's do that.
Let's do that. So here we got.
What?
Yeah. So
wait a minute. This looks different.
It does look a little different. This is our 35 spline nodular iron case. We call it the race case. Definitely definable by the Currie C on the front.
I gotcha.
This is our flagship. So 35 spline. This is it, and we dress it with an aluminum big bearing pinion support, anodized red. It's eye candy, but it's very recognizably Currie.
Oh
yep.
My God.
1350 yoke, nodular iron case, big bearing pinion support. This is it. So this is going to be an awesome setup for your car. 370 gears should work really well with your setup.
Oh my God. Guys, I cannot wait. You subscribe, like I said, if you haven't, hit that join button. Join the Full Monty Club because we're going to be doing some specialized stuff. All proceeds of that join button help the channel to help me afford this stuff for you guys to learn from me and making mistakes.
Absolutely. Well, this stuff bolts together. So I'm glad that we're going to be on your channel. Thank you for obviously running Currie and showing how it works, man. Thanks for coming,
John.
man.
Appreciate it so much.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Guys, till next time. You guys know the drill. Building fast, driving faster.
Right on.
See ya.
See ya.